Okay, so we're looking at spreadsheets from what we call the advanced point of view, really, which is the advanced course. But what we'd actually do on the advanced course is we make sure that we cover all the bits of spreadsheets. So all those little things which we may have jumped over or maybe just covered very briefly, we're going to cover the lot today. So let's start with actually entering information into cells. So obviously these two cells here should have headings. So I'm going to use the headings January. I'm also going to use the heading Feb for this one. So they're all pretty well straightforward. Obviously, same with numbers. You can put any numbers in you like. So if you're putting a number into a cell, just typing the number by itself. What you cannot do is put anything like spaces in, because then it will go wrong. So you can put a number in, but if you put the same number in again, but this time put maybe a space either before or afterwards. I'm going to put a space after. Okay, what the computer will do is either delete the space, so the space is gone. So if I try space before, it's looked at the information and gone, no, that space doesn't make sense. But if you mix up numbers with text, what will happen is numbers will stay on the right. What I've actually done there is instead of putting a 0, I've actually put an O, a capital letter O. You probably see it better if I put a small letter O, but definitely it looks right, but it isn't actually correct. And because it isn't correct, because it isn't all numbers or all text, it actually aligned the number, well, the text, it aligned to the the left hand side to say it's text, even though it's only one item of text in it, it's text. Otherwise, it deleted the bit of text if it was spaces before or after. Okay. So the other thing we did was looking at inserting. So for example, inserting and deleting. So let's start with deleting. So these two rows here are not really required. So I can click on each one in turn, click the right mouse button and choose delete. And notice what I'm doing is clicking on the actual number of the row. Likewise with columns, you can click the right mouse button on a column label, which is a letter, A, B, C, D, E, F, G, choose delete, and it will delete that. And whatever's on the right will come to the left. So I'm going to do that again with this row, delete. I've got the heading there, which is now in the right place, but between the heading and the actual spreadsheet, I would like to make it slightly, bit of a gap. So I'm going to do the option. I'm going to insert a space. So I'm going to go to the column I want to move down, click the right mouse button and choose insert. Okay, and you'll find that works quite a few places. So there, for example, I've got too much space in between the headings and the actual information. So I'm going to remove that. There we go. Okay. Right. Column width. Column width is quite easy. Just move your mouse in between the column you need to make wider and the column to the right. Now, if you wish to automate it, you can just double click and it will automatically widen it. But as you see here, sometimes the thing you want to widen it to is not the main heading, which might be quite long, but one of the column headings. So what you can also do, you can manually widen it to what you want, so your own particular interests. Now, the rest, this column's quite good, but if I double click on it, it will double check that. And likewise, I can go through and double click on all of them. Useful when you can't see the full length of the column. So if there was information down below here which you couldn't see, that would be quite useful. Right, so formulas. Let's start with the first one. So a simple introduction to formulas is where you tell computers cell by cell, add this plus that. And it's almost like saying add 2 plus 2 equals. But what you actually do is put the equals first, and then you don't tell it the content, you tell it the location. So you don't type in 15 plus 20. What you actually do is click on the first cell, put your plus in, and then click on the second cell. And it represents different cell locations with different colors. So the first cell's in the blue, the second cell's in the red, and once you're happy, you press your enter button. Okay, let me just repeat that. So as I say, it's like, equals 2 plus 2, but you actually put the equals first. Equals first means basically what follows is a mathematical formula or function. Okay, and we're going to look at functions in a minute. So we'll click on the first cell, tell it what to do next, which is to add, and then click on the second cell. And that will last that would, be the same if you had 20 things to add. Although if you got more than one or two, it might be easier to use the second method I'm going to show you in a minute. Okay. Now that works fine. And if you want to at any point, if you want to double check the formula is correct, you can go to where you suspect there might be a formula, and it will actually show you the formula up there. Or even better still, double click on where there's a formula, and it will bring back the colors to represent, so you can see quite visually what is actually going on. And the green cell, of course, is where the answer is going to go. So press enter to accept that. Don't go clicking anywhere, otherwise you'll change the formula. Now, there is a way, once you've got a perfect formula, to copy that formula into other cells. Now, a simple explanation of this is, if I wanted to change this formula, which says A3 plus B3, if I wanted to change it onto row 4, what I'd actually do is substitute the number 3s to number 4. So I'd actually have the same formula, but instead of A3, it would be equals A4 plus, and instead of B3, it would be B4. Now, there's a way the computer can do that quite easily. Those sorts of tasks computers can do quite well. And that is to use this little pea-sized, tiny little thing in the bottom. I don't even notice as I'm moving around, it's changing my mouse from quite a broad mouse. So if I go there, for example, you can see it's quite a strong sort of cross shape to say that's a location you can click on. But when I go to this corner, it changes it to a very thin black mouse shape to say that the function of this particular part of the screen has a different meaning. And that meaning is basically to replicate, to copy and modify accordingly. So if I click there and then drag down into the boxes below, which also need formulas, and then let go, it will automatically recalculate those formulas. Now, of course, I can use the same techniques to double check those formulas are correct. So I can click on each formula in turn, look at the formula up there, or better still, as I say, double click. And again, I can check the formulas are working fine. So yes, indeed, it's changed it from A3 to A4 for that cell. But if I press enter now and go to the cell below, it's changed it from A3 to A5 for that cell, A6 for that cell, and A7 for that cell. And that's all the computer's done. It's looked at it and said, right, you're dragging it downwards, so I'll change the number and I'll change it one, increment accordingly to whichever row you're on. Likewise, if I was going across, which we'll probably do in a minute. Now, of course, there's other ways of doing calculations. The computer can do the calculations for you, so long as you tell it exactly what you want to add. So there's actually a button up here called AutoSum. Obviously, the Americans created this program, Excel, so they call it sum rather than add. We would have called it auto add. But AutoSum, if you click on it once in a location where there's text above and there's numbers to the left, it will normally add those numbers to the left together. Now, the problem with AutoSum, it actually confuses itself sometimes because it's pre-programmed to add in a certain order. And if it finds numbers above, even if just two sets of numbers above, it will add them rather than add to the left. So you'll see in a minute, what we got here is we got the sum of that range. So the sum of B4 to D4. In other words, the sum of B4, which is this location here, to D4. So anything that falls in between that area you can see the sort of rotating, the sort of dots are going around, that will add. So when I press enter, it will give me the answer. Now, of course, I can replicate that going downwards, and it will change accordingly. So when the first formula was the location of B4 to D4, I press enter. If I click on the location, the one below, it's on row 5, so it just changes to B5 to D5, and so on and so on. Okay. Now, the problem with the problem with AutoSum is it works fine most of the time, but you have to know when it's not going to work fine. So the first one was fine. There was no numbers above. There was only text. There was only the heading. So it calculated to the right, to the left. If I click on AutoSum on this one, it finds that there's only one number above, but there's more numbers to the left, so that works fine. But when you get to the third one, if I click on AutoSum, it's now found there's two numbers above, which meets its criteria to add upwards, which will give me the completely wrong answer. So you can either manually fix it by telling it what to add, by highlighting it there and pressing enter. Or you can override it before you use AutoSum and using the mouse to actually click from the answer cell over across all the cells to be added. You can highlight what's to be added and then click on AutoSum. And then the computer basically will know what to add. It will follow your instructions rather than try and work it out itself. Okay, the totals going upwards, just the same. Now, because it prefers adding totals going upwards, you find going upwards, it always tends to do it right anyway. So if I click on AutoSum, that will find that one. And I'll keep going across. Now, just because it normally works doesn't mean it always works. Sometimes it works perfectly going upwards. Sometimes it just goes, oh no, I want to add left. So you can't always rely on it. So it's always a case of keeping an eye on it. And of course, if you want to reproduce those formulas, but you've got a perfect formula there, so I'm going to check it's perfect. So it's the sum of B4, which is that location there, B4 to B6, that's B6. So anything that falls in between that grouping of numbers, 3 numbers, that's absolutely right. Press enter. So it gives me the first formula, and again I've got the replicate button. So I can drag that across, and that will use the same formula type, but modify accordingly. This time it's modified depending on the letter. So it's talking about B4 and B6 there. On the next column, it's talking about C4 and C6. Likewise, on the column D, it's talking about D4, D6, and the last one was column E, E4 and E6. So this time it's not changed the label, the numbers, it's changed the column labels, which A, B, C, D, E, and so on. So I'll just very quickly go through the next one. So to work out the formulas, I'll probably just very quickly use AutoSum to do the first one. Check it looks visually correct, which it looks good to me. Press enter, go back to it and replicate downwards. Okay, now it's not asked for a total, but there's no harm in putting a total in, I suppose. So I'll put a total in there. I'll go to where the first location should be. I can use AutoSum. It looks good. Press enter, click back on it and replicate. And I'm even doing an overall total, which is there. Okay. I won't do the last one. Obviously, you can work that out yourself. I'll let you work that one out yourself. Now, the other thing we did was formatting. To format a cell, obviously you can highlight sort of regions, and you can use these buttons here to make it look different. So you can choose this button here to choose the color of the text, and you can see it shows a representation of the colors then. And then you can use, once you've highlighted what you want to change as one, you can use the bucket fill to change the background as well. Okay, and you end up with some quite striking colours. So I'll probably go for a nice green, and I'll do likewise for there. Okay, but there's also a very good, powerful way of actually getting the computer to automatically not only colorize to a professional standard, but also to automate the actual spreadsheet. So let me show you this one. Now, the first thing I do is I'm going to highlight just the headings and the original data. I don't highlight the row below. The reason is I don't want it to be included in the automation. It can stay there, and I can certainly manually colorize this, but I want it to be separate from the automation, more of which you'll see in a minute. And what I'm going to do, I'm going to hold down the control button and just once type the letter T. Now what the computer's doing, it's saying, do you want to automate and colorize this area here? The process I'm referring to has a little name called create table. So I'm going to create an automated table basically. And the other choice I do have at the top here, which normally works itself out if it's correct or not, is it has a little tick box to say my table has headings. Now, as you can see, this table does have headings, so that is correct. So it's worked that out correctly. So I'm going to click OK, and what's happened is it's actually colorized it to a standard sort of business layout. But not only that, it's absolutely automated that table. So let me give you an example of what I mean. If I go to one of these drop-down boxes, I have a facility now to sort, and I also have the facility to hide information. Okay, so I can turn fiction off, and I can sort in alphabetical order. Okay, oh, didn't turn fiction off. Let me turn fiction off. Okay, So I can do reference and travel books only, and I can figure out which is the highest selling, which is the lowest selling, and so on quite easily. Okay, so it gives you a lot of power. So I can clear that by using this button here, and I can keep going back and clearing if needs be, and so on. So if I wanted to know, for example, which was the highest selling, either travel, reference, or fiction, I'd go to the total to work out which is the highest selling, and I can sort it from smallest to the least selling at the top, or sort from the largest to the highest selling at the top. So I'm going to go for the highest selling, and it reorders now. Of course, it's not just reordering that one column, it's reordering all the data to match. So for that one column, which is referring to reference, it's bringing all the information into the correct order. So all the whole row moves, not just that one. It's that one group of cells. Okay, and because it didn't highlight the total at the bottom, it absolutely stays where it is. Otherwise, it'd actually be included. And if I asked for the highest, it would always go to the top because that's the sum of all those numbers added together. That just stays there at the bottom, and that doesn't get affected in any way. So let me repeat with another spreadsheet. So the first thing I'm going to do is highlight just the labels at the top and the original data. Doesn't matter about the totals, that's fine. Totals are good to include in the table, but I don't highlight the totals at the bottom. Otherwise, it will treat those totals just like any other input, any other data, because it doesn't recognize the word total as having a special meaning. It's not using artificial intelligence as yet. I'm sure in future versions it will. So I'm going to hold down Control, touch the letter T. It's going to work out if it's got a heading, which it has, so it's turned that box on, and it's going to work out the range. And by the way, don't worry about the dollar signs. They have a special meaning, but I think for this level, it's not really worth talking about. So, but you can see it's talking about A3, which is this cell up here. It's about A3 to H8, which is this cell down here, just behind the box. So that's H8. Okay, so I'm happy with that. I'm going to click the OK button. So it's colorized this, and let's put them in alphabetical order, saying, yeah, well, let's put them in order of total sales. Yeah, the totals stay the same. Yeah, if you're not happy, by the way, with the colorizing, you can just click. In fact, it's always probably good practice to re-highlight, but you don't actually need to re-highlight, because so long as you click on a cell, it doesn't matter which cell, you can actually go to what's called design, table design, and you can choose yourself a different color, and it will change automatically the whole table, because for design purposes it will treat the table as one entity. Okay, I think that pretty well covers everything. I mean, obviously I'm going to leave that for you guys to have a play with yourself, where you can turn it into a table, you can work out the totals, have a bit of